I'm Shawneen Pete, and I'm an associate professor at the University of Regina, and I'm also the executive lead for indigenization for the University of Regina. And I'm so pleased that we have this opportunity to work together. It was one of my tasks this year, was to help to showcase First Nations, Métis, and Inuit researchers to our larger community. And I had this wonderful opportunity to work with a committee who helped to put this week of activities together. I did the head count on how many sessions we have, and we're over 20 sessions with 48 presenters. There's elders panels, there's individual papers that are being read, and there are a number of other panels that will be happening. We have 2 evening events, and we also have one creative activity on Friday afternoon that's really aimed at supporting people in the helping fields. So using art therapy in their own healing work to support their professional practices. The research that First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people do is very diverse. It's as diverse as our peoples are. And the reasons that we do this work is primarily to inspire and to create social change. And each of us in our work comes with this intention that we want to make our communities and the generations to come in our society a better place to be, something healthier for all of us. And we make use of our research in much the way we do our teaching. We mean it to transform. And so this research showcase is really meant to demonstrate the wide range of topics that we're involved in, as well as the varieties of Indigenous researchers and educators that we work with. So I would like Lynn to bring greetings on behalf of First Nations University. Dr. Lynn Wells, Vice President for Academics. And the mic's
Shawneen tells me the mic is not working, so I'm going to use my prop voice and bellow it out, and I think the noisy chairs have made it down the hall. I want to welcome everybody. Thank you very much for being here this morning. As Shawneen said, let's hope that this brings spring, if I don't know what else will. I also want to thank the elders for lifting a pipe this morning to start this important event in a wonderful way, and I want to acknowledge our Minister of Advanced Education, Rob Norris, and thank you for being with us here today. This showcase, as Shawneen said, is meant to bring together a diverse group of researchers across a variety of fields. We're going to hear about the fine arts, we're going to hear about health, economic development, spirituality, Indigenous science, and this gives a sense of the broad array of knowledge that's connected with Indigenous people. One of the wonderful things about this event is it's come together, first of all, a terrific committee, great cooperation between the University of Regina and First Nations University of Canada. And I want to thank Shawneen very much for all the hard work she's done, and particularly Andy Miller here at First Nations U, who's really stepped up to bring our people together for this. But it's also brought together researchers not only from a number of fields, but Indigenous researchers and non-Indigenous researchers. And as we know, part of the mission of First Nations University of Canada is reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people. And this is a wonderful event to create that spirit of reconciliation. In my mind, the best way to reconcile with people is to come to know them. And what all of these presentations will do is give us a sense of how to know one another, how to understand Indigenous communities and their priorities, how to understand the history that's brought us to this point in our joint relationship in this country, and then look at ways to move forward. So I hope we have a wonderful turnout. There's lots to learn from the people who are presenting. They're going to bring a lot of wisdom and a lot of excitement to their presentations. I really hope that you enjoy the event as it goes forward this week, and I want to thank you all very much for being here. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, this week of research isn't without a variety of partners as well. From our provincial government, we were able to receive some funding to help promote this activity this week, as well as funding also came from SSHRC and the University of Regina, and in-kind contributions from First Nations University of Canada. So it's really been a joint effort in so many ways to bring it forward and to help it to be successful. And representing our ministry is Minister Rob Norris, who joined us this morning for pipe ceremony, and we're really pleased that he came to bring some greetings on behalf of the ministry today. Thank you. Please join us.
thank you for your leadership on this initiative. To our Elder Starblink, and I want to offer my sincere and humble thanks for the wisdom that was shared this morning, and a reminder to us all why we come together and the spirit of kindness that informs our work. You, Dr. Lynn Wells, thanks very much to First Nations University. I know that David Malloy is here, and First Nations Regina. David, I know that you've been an important supporter of this initiative along the way. And again, to Dr. Shawnee P. for your leadership on this initiative, and several others. You are helping tremendously, not simply at an institutional level, but you're helping our students and you're helping our community. And I want to say thank you so much for your work. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Premier Brad Hall, on behalf of the Government of Saskatchewan, and most especially on behalf of the Ministry of Advanced Education, the ministry I have the honor of serving, I'm delighted to be here this morning, and I appreciate the personal invitation to this unique, impressive, indeed historic endeavor, Imagining Canada's Future, the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Research Showcase that is helping to demonstrate the value of First Nations University, as well as the partnership with the University of Regina, and the participation and sponsorship that comes from our Social Science and Humanities Research Council. We're delighted that this national initiative is being hosted right here in Saskatchewan, in Regina, at First Nations University. As we all know, research in diverse fields is integral to our post-secondary community, our national post-secondary community. It's important for our students, it's important for our scholars, for our researchers, but it's also important for all Canadians. And that's why this First Nation, Métis, and Inuit Research Showcase is a remarkable opportunity to bring together people, not simply academics, although their expertise is helping to lead this, but experts and students and scholars and researchers and community members, all of which serve to highlight specific areas of research, but the relevance of this research, and to connect with others throughout our post-secondary community, but well beyond. And I'm delighted to see that this emphasis on our First Nations, on our Métis and Inuit research activities is taking place right here. This week-long showcase is bringing together people in fine arts, humanities, and social sciences, among other areas, all with a common link. Research as it pertains to and stems from our Aboriginal communities in Canada. This is vital work. This is timely work. It's timely because, as you know, within Saskatchewan, we see historic economic growth, we see historic community growth as our population continues to move forward. What we also know is how important it is for people right across the province to be able to share in the benefits of that growth. And that's one of the reasons that we've been able to work together. In fact, in last week's budget, $49 million directed specifically at First Nations and Métis initiatives to support post-secondary education and skills training. Another $6 million in response to the Joint Task Force on Improving Education and Employment. That's a doubling of the dollars year over year. And we're looking forward to working with our partners to see how best to invest those dollars for our students. In fact, since coming to office, we've invested more than $5.5 billion in post-secondary education. And we're seeing some real results. The number of First Nations and Métis graduates with a degree has increased by 40% since 2008 in Saskatchewan. We know that there's more to do, but we also know that moving together, in partnership is the way best to help Saskatchewan students and Saskatchewan families and Saskatchewan communities. And so today, I'm delighted to help join all of you for this showcase regarding First Nations, Métis, and Inuit research that informs all of us as Canadians. It's a Canadian showcase, and it's being hosted by First Nations University in partnership with the University of Regina and the Social Science and Humanities Research Council. I applaud all of you for taking this important, this vital, this historic leadership role in informing all of Canada about the significance of research that's underway. You're helping all of us better understand our country, and you're helping our students meet their full potential. And that's the way that Saskatchewan is going to meet its full potential. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the honor and opportunity of allowing me to join you for the pipe ceremony this morning, and me to be here for this launch of the week. Thank you.
I've also asked Dr. Dave Malloy to speak this morning as well, because our other partner was the SHIRT program, and I've asked Dave to say a few words about the SHIRT Leaders program. Thank you, Dave.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to, first of all, thank Elder Starblacken for a very humbling ceremony this morning, and I'd also note that I'm continually honored for being on Treaty 4 land. It's a pleasure to be here, a pleasure to be with all of you. This initiative is really quite remarkable. Not only has the committee, and I'd like to thank Shawneen, and Andy, and Carrie Barassa, and Lynn Wells, and many others that have been participating in this. We were given a fairly short timeline from Ottawa to pull this together, and this committee has done outstanding work in putting a tremendous showcase of research on for this week. I'd also like to thank Mr. Norris, not only for your financial contribution, but you continue to be a supporter financially, but also morally for the program here at the University for First Nations Métis Inuit research, but also research in general. So I'd like to thank you for your support. The SHIRT program is really quite interesting. This has been going on for a couple of years, and the intent of SHIRT 2 years ago was to find out how social science and humanities research can influence the issues facing Canada in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So what happened is every region in Canada was given some funding and an opportunity to explore what was relevant to that particular region. The University of Regina was given the honor to lead the prairie provinces in looking at what particular issues are going to be facing us over the next several decades. And what was really wonderful about our research is, we identified natural resources and citizenship and a variety of other issues that were facing the prairies. But I think what was unique and wonderful about the findings was that First Nations Métis Inuit issues were not one separate, identified issue. We had issues and opportunities as central to all of these other aspects. So central to natural resources, central to social justice, central to education, and so on and so forth. So we looked at this very much from an integrated perspective, and I think that was something that tweaked Ottawa a bit, and then provided us with further funding to present this week of events. So just so you know, not only do we have a number of events going on this week here in Regina, but we also have events going on across the prairies this week to demonstrate the power and the interest of First Nations Métis Inuit research in the prairies. So it's going to be a wonderful week. Thank you all for participating, for coming. Get out to as many events as you certainly can, and I look forward to seeing you. So on behalf of the U of R and President Timmons, again, thank you so much, and enjoy the week.
Well, let's get this started. Our first panel today, I'm really looking forward to actually turning the reins over to someone else, Jesse, Archibald, Barbara. I believe that you've been tagged to do some introductions for our panel, our very first panel for today. So I'll ask you to start making your way to the mic, and I'll ask also the panel members if they wouldn't come and take their seats up at the front, please, before we get started. And I'm going to take Jesse in. Thank you. Take it this
Sure.
Yeah, that's right. Need a wardrobe change.
I have to leave at 11, it's not because of you guys.
It's good to know. Thank you. Thanks, Bobby. So good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce the first panel of the First Nations and Métis and Inuit Research Showcase. Today we have our first panel is with the members of the Indigenous Fine Arts Department. And there's a saying that art is the spirit of culture. And indeed we see infinite diversity in that spirit. And today we have the pleasure to hear 4 visions of art, 4 concepts, and yet 1 department. So our first panel is that very name, Indian Fine Arts, 4 concepts, 1 department. And this panel is a discussion with the Indigenous Fine Arts Unit on the topic of their individual bodies of work, as presented in the current exhibit, IFA, It's Fine Arts, that we can see in the gallery here. Our first presenter is Lionel Payachu. He's a faculty member here from the Red Pheasant First Nation, and he teaches sculpture, traditional Indian art, and Indian art history. His recent work involves traditional, native, non-functional work, or in other words, taking the function out of the functional. That clarifies that. He'll explain that a little more clearly than I can there. Our second presenter will be Barbara Malini. She's an instructor here and is a prairie-based intermedia artist whose interdisciplinary site-responsive work engages with the landscapes and foundations of contemporary society and culture. Her recent work aims at unmapping the Assiniboine, or in other words, upsetting the settler narratives and the national imaginary. Our third presenter will be Catherine Boyer. She is the gallery and collections coordinator here, and as an emerging Métis artist, her work is a crossover between traditional and non-traditional printmaking, sculptural, and installation work. Her recent work involves familial memories and the inheritance of these memories by using the framework of domestic furnishings. And finally,
Our last presenter will be Judy Anderson, a Cree artist from the Gordon First Nation and a faculty member here. Her recent body of work is a fusion of contemporary ideas, traditional mediums, and Aboriginal spirituality. She uses graffiti as a way to uphold the tradition of memorializing a person's life, but with a unique twist, by creating handmade paper clothing to honor the spirit names of those close to her. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming our first panel and our first speaker, Lionel Payachi.
Thank you, Jess. How was that? Tansen Tudemok. And ask one of the B square. And ask Gajo the Gatagotic. One Sinzik. Good morning, friends, students, colleagues. It's an honor to be here, to be part of the FNMI Research Showcase. In our Cree language, I was welcoming everybody who made it here, including the ones that got lost. As part of our conference, my colleagues and I, in our fine arts, agreed to give a short presentation in reference to the faculty show called FIA, I guess. The art exhibition is open to the public at the present time. I would like to open up the presentation to mention that I've often heard that art should speak for itself. So I have concluded that there is no need to say anything further. However, if art speaks for itself, then why are we often uncertain about our own interpretations? And more often we assume that there must be more to a certain piece than what we can perceive. How do we perceive Native art that is represented in a museum? How do we perceive perceive art as a contemporary representation in major galleries? Uncertainty may complicate understanding of an artist's work and would at times induce the observer to look maybe closer, to examine deeper of the social issues and other people's reactions and emotions, that also what the environment that the artwork was conceived at. You can also observe what objects and life forms surrounded the body of work. So the more we engage with artwork, the more we begin to associate. But most often, not easily identifiable. The artist may elicit a provocative assertion, which cannot be or felt easily. So one of the functions of artists is to make a statement of some kind. It may be a simple statement that could express the obvious, however evokes complexity. The artist may be trying to communicate an idea, an emotion, or some kind of purpose to their work. Art is usually about self-expression because the artist feels strongly enough about what they are trying, what they're trying to put into the form that they and others can come to terms with. This product of their self-expression can help others because there will always be people who feel the same way, but they cannot really express it. So these people will identify with the artist and draw encouragement, purpose, and excitement about the ideas expressed. So when society feels and sees clearly on certain issues, it provides opportunity for change in thought or appreciation of the message behind the art. It can cause people to re-examine their thinking on the subject that was put before them. So I always believe that the main factor when looking at art is to remember that art making is motivated by place or environment. For example, when we survey Indian art here at the First Nations University of Canada in Indian art history, for example, the Southwest, the environment is abundant with clay. The Southwest artist adapts to a tradition of pottery making. The Northwest coast, with acres of forests, are inspired by red and yellow cedar. The Northern Inuit produce art from traditional medium in stone, ivory, bone, and various animal skins. Mediums that are easily acquired in the northern region. So artists from these specific environments continue to use their traditional mediums that were passed down to them from time immemorial. Like our art curriculum here at the First Nations University of Canada, our programs inspire our students to learn the traditional art making of our forefathers, but are also encouraged to learn contemporary art practice. The two-world concept offers well-rounded paradigm to open the doors for students into multiple or multifaceted possibilities. When we examine our own faculty exhibition here at the First Nations, we begin to see what I mean when I say our place of origin motivates and inspires what we use as artists. As you examine closer to the work in the exhibition, it will be easy to conclude that the work really does relate to our place and origin. Now, to get back to my assumption that art should speak for itself, I know my colleagues most likely will rebuttal me and tell me to speak for myself. So to initiate a small survey, I would like to ask the audience what they think of my drum piece that is showing here on the screen. And I'd like to show ask maybe 3 people to just give me their assumption of what the piece means. Maybe I'll start with Carmen.
Well, Lionel, as a good woman, I'm a little concerned that you have imprisoned Tomi, the spire trickster, within. But I would think otherwise, it's a drum that resonates beautifully with traditional materials, but that non-functionality here is something that takes this to what we would, in fine arts, move from a functional utilitarian piece of contemporary art to one that can function as a drum, but can speak to us in other ways.
I recorded that. Okay, so maybe one or somebody else can sort of give me their interpretation. Can somebody else volunteer?
So that is what you were talking about, removing the functionality from the function. Is that it's a drum?
It is non-functional art.
Yeah. And turning the drum into kind of transforming it into something else entirely. I guess in that way you're also restoring some of its mythic elements with the spider web, bringing in traditional stories. And also, one thing about it as well is that it's not just something completely artificial, right? It's all made out of natural elements.
That's right.
And it's living as well, because you have a living presence inside the art as well. So maybe it isn't so non-functional in that sense.
That's true. That's a good point. Yes.
Okay, I'm a bass player. I'm not a drummer. But so drums are heartbeats, and drums are communicative. And if this is turned upside down, yes?
This is right side up.
This is right side up. Oh, but there's no skin on top.
No, the drum in the center is a full drum that's playable when taken apart.
Well, the way I looked at it from here, I thought, well, it's open, so a drum is usually communicating outward, but this is a drum that seems to be accepting communication inward. Again, I'm a bass player, so what do I know?
Right. Well, it's good that you stayed playing bass. You're not a lead guitar player. That's good. No, you're all pretty close. Very close.
When I looked at the piece in the gallery where I see the trunk of a tree with the drum in the middle showing, to me it spoke of a potential for a tree to become a different voice, become a drum, and the web over the top of it was perhaps the creativity, the potential to make intricate sort of design, the intentionality of creativity that is within any tree or any object, that there's a potential for a voice to come from it.
That's true. And from the four inspirations I got, you all touched on a little bit of it, some points that are, exactly what I was looking for. And what I will tell you, that by looking at the name of the piece is taciturn, which is a term that means to silence. Now this is what, so if you knew the meaning of taciturn, the name of the work, the term would give you an indication that the work is saying nothing, because the drum is silenced. And as some of you might know, the drum is an essential tool communicating with song, dance, language, and connecting to our spirituality. Only fragments at the center of the drum is visible through the web to indicate our yearning to be heard through the web of life. Sometimes the meaning of a work of art is complicated by simplicity. Thank you very much.
thank you, Lionel. That was very interesting. Lots to think about.
Yes.
And it's nice to, but I'll introduce myself first. Hi, my name is Barbara Manili. I'm a settler descendant living in Treaty 4 territory. I'd like to thank Dr. Pete and all the organizers of this event, my colleagues on this panel, First Nations University, University of Regina, and most especially our hosts in Treaty 4 territory. It's an honor to be here with you today. I'm an artist and a practice-based researcher. I teach as a sessional instructor at First Nations University and the University of Regina. And I'm currently a PhD candidate in cultural studies at Queen's University in Kingston. As a practice-based artist researcher, working site responsibly through sculpture, installation, media, performance, and dialogic practice, I combine theoretical inquiry with contemporary intermedia art and all these forms. My current project, Unsettling the Last Best West, Restoring Settler Imaginaries, investigates how art was used in the promotion and dissemination of colonial ideologies and in the recruitment of settlers to Canada in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Following Ariel Azule's work on the archives of potential history, which engages history as something that can be rewritten, my project engages the potential for creative practice to disrupt the ongoing cultural performance of settler colonialism and to activate strategies of reimagining and restoring. I developed this work from my settler perspective, and I focus on a settler audience. Site-responsive or site-specific artwork is defined by Miwon Kwan as the cultural mediation of the broader social, economic, and political processes that organize urban life and urban space. In my work, I extend from Kwan to involve processes that organize contemporary life and contemporary space, so everything. So the lens of site responsivity offers a view of the contemporary settler colonial site that includes its full range of influences and processes. The originating fictions of terra nullius circulate through the social, economic, historical, and political in an ongoing cultural performance that supports and maintains contemporary settler colonialism. Margot Francis describes this as the everyday cultural work of settlers and states that the cultural imaginary is constructed through objects whose very banality belies their crucial role in rendering both the crises of national identity and its reproduction. There's infinite opportunity for creative practice to intervene in the site of this performance of the everyday. Francis refers to Homi Bhabha to suggest that the most predictable objects might still invite a self-reflexive engagement through the displacing image of art. My focus is the study of immigration advertising, specifically under Clifford Sifton, Canada's Minister of the Interior from 1896 to 1905. As the Canadian government sought to populate the Prairie West, Sifton's innovative methods recruited settlers, white people from Britain, the United States, and Northern Europe. Sifton's successful ideological campaign employed an array of tactics, including traveling exhibits, installations, film, and the innovative design and distribution of printed materials. My visual and material engagements are shaped to echo Sifton's multifaceted strategies across a range of media. I engage critically and creatively with this rich and varied source material to reactivate, reframe, and to restore. Through this process, I aim to build and enact creative strategies of decolonization. I'm currently developing 3 bodies in this work. My animated video, Leave Forever, is made from still images found in a promotional brochure from 1903 entitled Canada, Granary of the World. By reactivating and restoring and reframing this material over 100 years after it was made, I interrogate and tease how colonial ideologies slip into and operate in the present. The soundtrack to my video, which I'm going to spare you today, is a 1910 recording of the Maple Leaf Forever. And viewers are invited to sing along following the bouncing ball. This invitation to embodied viewership offers disruption to the everyday, possibly unconscious, cultural performance of contemporary settler colonialism. Next one. Currently in process is another performance piece titled Unsettling. This is in process, so I'm showing you some of my source material here. This piece is based on the vermilion-colored horse-drawn exhibition wagons used by Canadian land agents working farm to farm, door to door, recruiting settlers one at a time. A vermilion red costume, the piece will be a vermilion red costume containing and displaying static and time-based media. Unsettling will appropriate the capital and the personal touch. Colonial recruiters worked face to face, and I will too, as I invite viewers to hunt through my clothing for small video projections and various other samples of colonial booty. This offers a close physical relationship between the viewer, the source material, and the appropriator, subverter, maker, performer, me. The small and intimate operation of unsettling is crafted to assert that it's not only possible, but also necessary to imagine decolonization in personal, tiny, but doable ways. Unmapping Assiniboia is a series of cartographic pieces that focus on structures of colonial claiming. With these pieces, I work directly from archival settlement maps, tracing the surveyed borders, the grid, the railways, and place names. After reproducing the settlement maps, I then erase the colonial tracks, digging out the grid, the railways, and the names. In this process, I work literally from Shireen Razik's notion of unmapping to shape a ritual of undoing. The resulting pieces show the scars, the detritus of removal, but present a possible decolonized land. Some images from the work in the gallery now. Distributed to prospective immigrants in Britain, the United States, and parts of Northern Europe, the archival maps I work with are likely to have passed through the hands of immigrants. I work from the premise that these maps were designed and published in Canada, distributed abroad, and then carried back by settlers. My process of working with these maps offers extended engagement. These maps are artifacts, physical objects, and can be understood as containing their own histories. Working with these maps is important, but my methodology is not simply about drawing and erasing. It's about these processes as creative or practice-based research. This is an important distinction. The processes of practice-based research incorporate visual and haptic, physical, and scholarly ways of knowing. This opens opportunities and paths of inquiry that are not as readily accessible through text-based research on its own. In dance training, for example, movement patterns can be learned by translating from one part of the body to another. A gesture learned with the right hand can be translated and expressed with the foot, or the spine, or an elbow. It's not necessary or efficient to mediate this knowledge through text. Similarly, my current investigations into colonial site incorporate physical ways of knowing. By tracing colonial maps, I can know the human hands that made them, in the lettering, the line weights, and the dangerous fictions of plentiful prairie streams. In my former work as a cartographer, I've drawn this same land countless times. But drawing these maps with a critical mind and a creative hand opens to an expanded knowledge of the material I am researching. This surprises and delights me every day. And more importantly, by seeing the ways individual human hands were involved in creating settler colonial structures, I know that individual hands can participate in developing passages of decolonization. Patrick Woolf states that the structural complexity of settler colonialism could sustain libraries of elaboration. The enormity of the settler colonial structure is daunting. That's definitely a power, but it's also a weakness, because from time to time it's possible to be undaunted. There are endless ways into something so large, so many ways to intervene and interrupt, even if the disruption is small. Lorenzo Veracini suggests that the decolonization of settler colonial forms needs to be imagined before it can be realized. and that's a good place to start. Settler recruitment campaigns convincingly demonstrate that people are moved through varied and creative strategies of engagement, through words and pictures, inducements and appeals. It took these diverse approaches to construct colonial imaginaries, and it requires wide-ranging and creative strategies to disrupt them. Thank you. We are dwindling. Carmen. Okay, so my name is Catherine Boyer, and yes, my position is taking care of the gallery and the art collection here at the university. So pulling this exhibit together was really great to work with the colleagues that I normally work with just within the department. So it's nice to see all of our work in a different context together. And you'll have to excuse me because I am suffering from a cold, so things get a bit snotty. I will be dealing with this. Okay. I have a memory of spreading my mother's ashes in Grenfell, Saskatchewan. It's near our family farm, a town where my mother grew up in, and that I spent a lot of my summers visiting my grandparents. It was Mother's Day, and the sky was the bluest that I had ever seen in my entire life. Since my mother passed away in September 2009, I have devoted part of my art practice to working with the themes of grieving, mourning, and also honoring her life. Something that I was fascinated with throughout her lifetime, and especially so after the fact, was her own urge to create. My mother was a scholar and an artist in her own right. She was a seamstress, a weaver, textile developer, embroider, beater, any given thing she had a hand in. And she was just intensely interested in creating something from nothing. She passed these skills on to me, and part of this body of work is honoring what she taught me. So grieving is a complicated and extremely individual response. Oftentimes the response of children to the death of a mother or father is in connection to the surviving parents' response to bereavement. My father's grieving process took form, and mine almost instantly took opposite form, wherein he was really interested in removing things that reminded him of her from our home, where I was more inclined to keep and hold on to anything that would spur memories of her for me. So I treasured the memories that I had of her and mourned the ones that I was never able or would never able to have. Even when we try to describe current events and situations, we present them in terms of our own concerns and framework, as in we represent them. Similarly, in describing the past, we can only produce representations which are further translated by the vagueness of memory. Try as we might to reproduce the story of what happened, the passage of time erodes and changes memory. In these cases, the person with whom we might check the truthfulness of these stories is no longer available to verify. There's also ample difficulty when sociologists attempt to study the effects of early maternal loss due to our societal inclination to silence, internalize, and shame the grieving process in public spaces. Oftentimes, individuals' ability to construct narratives of maternal death is hampered by the silences that surround them, and this could be within the family or societally.
By producing this work of art and presenting these narratives, I strive to challenge the silence, one that ironically further removes the deceased from our current lived experiences. We are surrounded by many things that further distort and distance these memories from reality, yet we continually turn to them for the comfort that we seek during such a loss. Technology and the photograph, for me personally, is a strong culprit of this. However, I embrace the unreliable convictions of my memory in my artistic exploration of them. Grenfell, Saskatchewan can be seen represented as these abstract images that you see before you and in the gallery. Pieces of the land are divided and emphasized by color relationships. The colors are sourced and chosen from distinct memories that I have of my mother and palettes that remind me of her. For example, there's a blue that I use quite frequently that I only associate with the blue of the color of my grandparents' house. It's very specific and I can picture it perfectly time and time again. These landscapes are not landscapes of your typical nature. I come to this image by going into Google Maps, a notably objective lens, and I begin by omitting sections of the land that are not associated with anything that I remember. In Photoshop, I deconstruct the remaining landscape and piece it back together to form this abstract imagery. The colors are done through the hand screen printing process. While this all may seem like unnecessary steps to the end product, I have attempted to mimic the complex process of remembering sentimentally and what a 7-year loss can feel like and look like as memories become almost unrecognizable despite belonging to me. This now brings me to the second portion of my little installation, the furniture. A phenomenon that can be seen in the 20th century world is that the majority of patients die in hospitals, and we see that death is expressly kept away and out of the home. But grief and death is primarily in the home. It is returning to an empty, lonely house when true mourning and grief begins. The process of dying has been removed from the home and placed within institutions where it has been rendered sanitary, invisible, neutral, and more importantly, controllable. This is the culturally specific phenomenon that is particular to Western society. In the modern world, the medicine has taken charge of life and death, replacing the more traditional family, religion, and spirituality. We have delegated the management of grief to doctors, psychologists, and social workers who set standards for appropriate grieving behaviors by establishing certain expressions of it and duration of grief. And that the notion that grief is a finite process that can be resolved through clinical treatment exacerbates the cultural denial of mourning by keeping grief, like death, out of the realm of everyday experience. My work denies this cultural regulation and instead brings mourning back into the home and unto its furnishings. I've been developing the idea that the truest and most honest forms of human grieving and expression of loss occur in the home and in privacy. The only witness of these truths are the walls of the home and all that is housed within it. What's more is that these objects, clothing and furniture, everything that has been left behind by my mother, has taken a life of its own. In many ways, these pieces hold on to a piece of her, which in reality seems to be my memory of her interacting with them. It's the importance of her touch and her mark left on these objects. This is where the same imagery of Grenfell, imposed and translated by beating, becomes part of the furniture. It shows a complex amalgamation of person, place, and thing within the within the fluidity of memory. The home is also the location for some very intricate familial shifts and changes due to the loss of the mother figure. The home is where the mother, and more importantly, the archetype of the mother, has traditionally held the family together. Mothers often fill the central role of the nuclear family. Central to our definition of motherhood is that the mother should simply be there. Being there becomes many things. It can be cooking, cleaning, washing, taking care of the children, and generally just taking care of the family. The archetypal mother of the family performs these roles on a daily basis. Therefore, mothers cannot simply be replaced, and families feel as though they have fallen apart, and a home becomes a burden when mothers die. The home is an integral part of death and the grieving process because of its essential connection to the archetype of the mother. But almost more importantly, it is where our cultural has delegated the mourning process.
Okay, so my work, the themes that I work with are very personal. And so they're family related, they're about myself, they're about friends and things. But what I've been finding out more recently is that I'm starting to focus more and more on honoring. So honoring individuals in my life, those again being my family, both nuclear and extended, and then close friends. So for me, to honor is to regard someone with great respect. And as an artist, the best way I know how to honor someone is to make work about them or for them. So I have two bodies of work that I'm going to be speaking about. Some of you heard me speak about the first body, so I'll be quick. Good. So Burlow and Phillips state, narrative scenes on buffalo hide robes and teepees validated and memorialized a man's exploit in war or success in hunting, or they depicted images from dreams and visions. A man wearing such a painted robe was publicly displaying his own personal history and would use it as a visual aid in his autobiographical narrations. So, around the time that my son would have traditionally been learning these skills that would take him into manhood, things like hunting and warring, he was actually a teenager that was trapped in the contemporary urban society of today. Therefore, around grade 9, the troubles he'd been facing in his life became more difficult and were impeding on his life in profound ways. So as he struggled through these difficulties, we, my family, supported him. And I thought about the ways that I could honor him as the individual that he was. And I realized what he found a sense of purpose in was creating letters. So here he found acceptance and friendship in the culture of art. So Cruz was an aspiring graffiti artist, and I needed to honor him for the great deeds in this respect. Letters and paint were his exploits and successes. They displayed and continue to display his personal history, as well as acting as a visual aid in his autobiographical narrations. So by using contemporary ideas with traditional mediums, Exploit Row, toying around, recognizes and honors Cruz. Here, the use of the term toy acknowledges his inexperience as a writer while honoring the beginning of his journey as an artist and as a man. This fully beaded hide represents his first burner he created at the age of 12. So a burner is any piece that has good bright colors, good style, often in wild style, and seems to burn off the wall. So this piece is the first in an intended series of 4, where I'll take a look at and map his graffiti life. So I've just started the second one, so everybody, have good thoughts. Okay, excellent. Okay, so spirit clothing is my second body of work that I'd like to speak about. So, no, that's good. That's good. No, back. Yeah. Great. Okay, so the first piece in this series of work is called A Dress for Riel's Spirit, which was created in 2010. And the second piece is called an Outfit for Cruz's Spirit, created in 2014. So I wish to acknowledge and thank the Saskatchewan Arts Board for the Indigenous Pathways grant that I received that made it possible for me to buy this miniature Hollander beater called the Critter, which I'm showing you here. The wonderful thing about the Critter is it makes very good paper. The dress that I made for Riel was actually beat with a binder, and the integrity of that is not as strong as one that is beat with a Hollander beater. So it withstands all the prying and pulling you need to do with the paper when you work with it. Okay, so I'm very grateful for the Sask Arts Board. When the idea to make handmade paper clothing first came to me, I thought, hey, this is a really great idea. I should just do it. So I know why I did it. I want to honor individuals and their spirit names in a way that shows the beauty of both. So I'm going to admit something here that I don't know if I should, but my favorite ceremony to attend is a naming ceremony. I get very excited when I go to one, and I'm always blown away when somebody gets their name. Because I know that these names go beyond skin deep, and sometimes even beyond our own understanding of what that name is. So sometimes it'll take us a long time or time to actually grow into it physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So these thoughts are what initially drove the artwork. But as I got ready for this presentation, I further contemplated this series and realized that the work had a few more layers. So of the utmost importance, I would like to say that I'm using these bodies as subject, not object. I'm humanizing and removing the colonial gaze. Jolene Rickard writes, a number of artists are collaborating with their subjects as part of their work. The impulse to collaborate or seek willing consent from their participants is no doubt a counter-objectification strategy. It allows the artist a wider berth of creative interpretation while it deconstructs the historic, colonizing gaze, end quote. My first subjects, Riel, Cruz, Debbie, and Brenda, have been willing participants and completely engaged in the process, even as I created garbage bag clothing for them and then covered those parts of their body with casting material, as you can see Brenda here, sitting and waiting for hers to dry. And to the back, if you look to the left there, that's actually Debbie. So once these are complete, they actually act as the mold for the handmade paper. For these pieces, I was thinking about and drawing upon sacred thought regarding clothing. Once I was speaking with an elder from Poundmaker Reserve, and I was mostly complaining about my son who would just throw his clothes all over the floor and not care about it. And so his answer to me was he gave me a teaching regarding how sacred our bodies are, and the clothing should be thought of in the same way, because it is what covers and protects our bodies. By taking care of our clothing, we are taking care of ourselves and showing respect to our bodies. Berlow and Phillips write that on the plains, the universe of meaning can be discerned in the painted, quilt, and beaded designs on clothing, and in the way that people presented themselves. Plains languages reveal that people adorn themselves in proper relationship to the gods. In some cases, powerful items of ceremonial gear were described in words more approximated. So whose approximate translation is, something sacred wears me, a reversal of ordinary assumptions about who is the wearer and what is worn. Clothing arts also revealed much about cosmological concerns and secular hierarchies, end quote. It is with these thoughts that I approach these pieces of handmade paper clothing. I cannot go deeper than the skin, so instead I cast their bodies. These casts are as close as I can come to recreating the skin that holds the spirit names. I then imbue the handmade paper clothing with items that hint at the names. How I understand an Indian name or spirit name is that it embodies our essence, and it is how we are recognized in the spirit world. Depending on where you're from, some can use it as they see fit, while others are not allowed to speak their name. We, my family, use it to introduce ourselves in prayer, and the owner of the name decides who they would like to tell. Therefore, it's not my business to be telling anyone's name. Given the okay to create these first two pieces by Cruz and Riel, I hint at their names. I believe these pieces honor my daughter and son and their spirit while representing their beauty as a human being. Rebecca Lyons states, nothing is as personal as the clothes we wear. Clothing can be seen as a vessel that holds the human spirit, end quote. I agree and believe the clothes we choose for ourselves are really an expression of who we are. And if we're observant, we can learn much about people by looking at how they clothe themselves. Kathleen Ash Milby writes, as Native people began to adopt European-style dress, non-Native society fixated on an imagined visual paradigm of Indian authenticity that consisted of long hair, high clothing, and dark exposed skin. And further, that stereotypes about Indian identity and debates about authenticity associated with skin and blood continue to show Native people both within their own communities and in the larger world, end quote. Defining who and what constitutes an Indigenous person is the result of the process of colonization. I believe these pieces of handmade paper clothing decolonize because the subject has been removed, leaving behind their exact physical likeness imbued with their spiritual essence. I feel there is no question that these handmade paper clothing pieces are molded from Indigenous people because of the infusion of spirit. As such, the viewer need not ask or be required to know if the person has long hair or dark skin. In closing, I'd like to share with you the thoughts of my willing participants. I asked 2 questions. Why did you let me cast you? And how do you feel about me making you an outfit? Riel said, Ariel thinks this piece is pretty and it makes her feel special because it's only about her. She also likes that her name is a secret and nobody knows it but herself and her family. Cruz said, it's cool to be a part of this. It's cool how the spirits translate into a visual art piece and they speak to the person whose body is casted. My piece speaks to me in ways you and I don't expect. And I'm just going to take a sidebar here. When I finished this piece, I was having difficulty with how it had turned out. But then Cruz gave me an interpretation of it, and he reconciled all these difficulties, and I'm going to paraphrase him here. He said, the piece is feminine with the puffs of fur, and I expected the bear hide to be bigger, but I got my name when I was a baby. So it was like the young bear being used in this piece as a metaphor for my name that is stretching to fit my adult body. I thought that was pretty good. So Debbie said, I thought it was a good idea for me because it's part of a journey of self-exploration that I'm on with getting my name as an adult. The feelings involved are very deep in this work. It's not like buying a new dress, but going to get the dress that is the most important in my life. You get clothes for certain occasions like a wedding dress, but this is more important, and I look forward to your interpretation. Brenda said, your art is very personal. You're inspired to honor family, memory, spirit. And when you asked, it was like an affirmation that we were family. You were my sister. I knew it before, but this was like being enveloped within it, and at the same time declaring it. I feel blessed that you think enough of me and my name to make the effort, but also I feel like it'll give another form to the life of my name, so its life force will grow stronger. I know my name is alive because it's me, but this represents another embodiment of it. Plus, I want to see it. I want to see how my name looks through your eyes. So I often have moments where I think, oh, why am I doing this? Am I a real artist? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Barb coined it the false artist syndrome. and I'm in there all the time. And I just want to say that by speaking with the people that I'm involved with, that I'm doing the work on, they really help me to get back down and realize that I am an artist. Thank you.